It is an incredibly seductive idea, dedicating your life to a single experiment, a human life organized entirely around beauty, conducted at maximum pitch. If you want to see what happens when that experiment is actually carried out, you have to look at its primary laboratory, Venice. Our specific entry point is 1948. A 49-year-old Peggy Guggenheim steps off a gondola onto the moss-slicked stairs of a crumbling palazzo, looking for a permanent home for herself and the casos she bought while Paris fell. The book, The Stones Remember, evaluates this romantic ideal through a practical lens. It examines the actual emotional and financial return on investment for an existence dedicated to art. The author follows three figures who tested the limits of this lifestyle: Luisa Casati, the living artwork; Gabriele D'Annunzio, the poet aviator; and Guggenheim, the private collector. The narrative explores a difficult recurring theme. The pursuit of a lasting cultural legacy often requires the total sacrifice of a personal life. We can analyze this through a life ROI framework. We are weighing their specific inputs, their wealth, their reputation, and their sanity against their ultimate historical outcomes. Venice, in this story, operates as an active crucible. It was the one city that could hold their impossible ambitions, even as it consumed their investments. Let's start with Luisa Casati. During the Belle Époque, she treated her own body as a canvas, attempting to make her physical presence a constant, radical performance. This wasn't a hobby, it was an obsession. She funneled a massive fortune into cheetahs on diamond leashes and ballrooms filled with moths, all to maintain her status as the most extravagant woman in Europe. The outcome was successful in its own way. She achieved a 10-year reign as a cultural icon and secured a level of aesthetic freedom that few others could imagine. But the trade-off was a total financial collapse. The cost of maintaining a living mythology turned out to be mathematically impossible. When the money finally ran out, she was stripped of her palaces and reduced to a single room, holding on to exactly 40 objects. Casati's life ROI suggests a brutal reality. You can successfully turn yourself into a masterpiece, but the maintenance cost is often your entire social and financial existence. Next, we move from physical extravagance to the realm of ideas, with Gabriele D'Annunzio. He established the influential position that beauty was a moral imperative. His cultural output was immense. He was Italy's greatest modern writer and a legendary seducer, who drew figures like actress Eleonora Duse into his orbit. He invested heavily in his own charisma and radical literature, shaping the psychological landscape of a generation. But those ideas eventually escaped his control, moving beyond the page and into the chaotic reality of his military adventure in Fiume. Here is the ultimate trade-off. He watched as his theories on beauty and national identity were borrowed and weaponized by forces he could not stop. Proto-fascist movements adopted his theatrical style and his language. They took his pursuit of beauty and used it to package a new kind of tyranny. D'Annunzio's ROI shows the danger of high-concept aesthetics. Ideas designed to liberate can be easily repurposed to serve as the branding for total control. By 1941, the stakes were reduced to survival. As Nazi forces occupied Paris, Peggy Guggenheim fled the continent, bringing a massive collection of modern art. Her primary input was a sense of profound, grief-stunned desperation. She funneled that energy into the aggressive acquisition of radical art that others were ignoring. She achieved a historic outcome, rescuing modern masterworks and funding artists like Jackson Pollock when their work was considered worthless. She managed the logistical nightmare of physically moving this collection through active war zones, often buying art while others were fleeing. Her investment culminated in 1948 at this Venetian palazzo. She finally secured a permanent home for the collection and for her own life. This triumph came at the cost of her personal stability. She endured the deaths of her loved ones and a lifelong sense of displacement. Guggenheim's work suggests that her aggressive curation functioned as a survival mechanism, one she paid for with the loss of almost everyone she loved. Casati, D'Annunzio, and Guggenheim each took a different path toward the same objective, a life lived purely for art. This quadrant chart helps us visualize the relationship between their efforts. On the x-axis, we have their level of personal sacrifice. On the y-axis, their historical legacy. All three figures land in the top right quadrant. The data shows a clear, repeating pattern in their lives. Their stories suggest that a life lived at maximum aesthetic pitch tends to demand an equivalent sacrifice. For those who want a scholarly, unromanticized study of the cost of cultural legacy, The Stones Remember is essential. But if you are looking for a light travelogue about Italian scenery, this book will be far too heavy for you. Venice remains timeless, not just because of its stone and water, but because it is populated by the ghosts of